What's going on, everybody? What's up? So, back at you again with another video. Following up on this Nicki Minaj, Jennifer Hugh fiasco. Now, this video is actually going to be a response to two other bloggers. One being Crystal Nicol, and then the other being the BlackTeablog, right? So with those two bloggers, they came out and they commented on this Nicki Minaj or Anika Tanya Mirage situation in her lawsuit with Jennifer Hugh. And I just thought that, everything they said was just wrong, dead wrong, right? And first, let me just come off and say that I don't know much about those bloggers. I've actually took a look at their channel. They have some very good channels, and the content looks good, and the delivery of that content is good. Everything is good about these channels except for the legal conclusions that they're coming to. Now, with that said, I don't hate Nicki Minaj. I actually like Nicki Minaj, but unfortunately, in my personal opinion, I think Nicki Minaj is just going to have to pay in this lawsuit. She's just going to have to bring her checkbook with her every time she goes to court, because in my personal opinion, it's only a matter of time before she has to pay out on this lawsuit, right? And first and foremost, everything that I say in this video is going to be alleged. Every single allegation that I make or every single statement that I make is going to be alleged. I may not say it because this is going to be a long video and I don't want to weigh it down by saying allege every, 4 or 5 sentences and so on and so forth. Hold on a second. Sorry about that. So I don't want to weigh this video down by saying allegedly, allege, every few words. Everything in this video is alleged. All I have to go on is this complaint, which is actually filed in the federal district courts. And I have no way of knowing if any of this stuff is true. Everything in this video is alleged. So now with that out of the way, yeah. So I think after watching Crystal Nicol's, she has a couple of videos on this situation, and then the BlackTeablog, she also has a couple of blog videos on this situation, right? And from my personal opinion, what I can surmise, they both support Nicki Minaj, and I think the BlackTeablog, she wants to keep everything positive as in terms of the direction that all this is going. Well, I hate to break it to you. I mean, I'm going to be positive as I can, but Nicki Minaj is going to have to pay. There's a lot of things that were said by both those bloggers that are just dead wrong, right? So I can't remember point by point everything that they said. I know Crystal Nicol, she actually in one of her videos, she read out Nicki Minaj's motion to dismiss. And I think one of the things that was in that motion is that this lawsuit was filed in the wrong jurisdiction, and that's not true. That is not true. And I'm going to explain why that's not true. And there's just a lot of different little things, but I'm not going to address every little thing in both those videos or in their videos, because they have several. I'm just going to explain, in my own personal opinion, why I think Jennifer Hugh has a solid lawsuit, and why I believe Nicki Minaj needs to bring her checkbook to court every time she comes to court, because eventually I believe Nicki Minaj is going to lose. Don't get mad. Don't get mad at me now. I'm just giving you the facts. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less, right? I'm just giving you the facts as I see it, right? And I think I'm going to go through this lawsuit and I'm going to explain why this is a solid lawsuit. It could be better. There's a few mistakes here and there that I think should be corrected. And there's possibly even more claims in this lawsuit, right? But I'm not going to go through all that. I'm just going to try to quickly go over this lawsuit and basically explain why Jennifer Hugh has a solid lawsuit and Nicki Minaj is going to eventually pay. Now, with all this said, I have no hate against the BlackTeablog. I have no hate against Crystal Nicol. This is just a friendly response video to their videos, and there's no hate, there's no nastiness behind it. None of that. I don't do internet beefs. It's not what I do. What I do is that often I'll find videos out there where people have difference of opinions, and I will make a video to basically rebut that. And that's what this is. That's what this is, right? I think that they're just simply wrong on a lot of things. So I'm not going to nitpick all their videos. I'm just going to explain in this video why this is a solid lawsuit, right? So let's just go ahead and jump into this. So this is the United States District Court, Eastern District of New York, and this is Jennifer Hugh versus Onika Tanya Minaj, aka Nicki Minaj, and her boyfriend Kenneth Petty, aka Zoo, right? Also known as Zoo, right? So one of the things that I want to first point out is that she is suing, Jennifer Hugh is suing. She's seeking to hold the defendants liable under various legal doctrines, including without limitations, vicarious liability, strict liability, respondent superior, aiding and abetting liability, and on other grounds. So various vicarious liability, that's a situation where you hire somebody to do a job, and they go off and do that job, but in the process of doing that job, they end up hurting or injuring someone. So you're going to be held responsible. And if you think about it, that's the way the world works. You've seen this millions of times. If there's a bus driver who's actually driving a bus and then he hits someone and he ends up injuring them, that person is going to sue him, and they're going to sue the company that he works for. So anytime you hire a person to do anything for you, if they go and they mess up and they screw something up and they damage somebody else's property or they hurt someone, you're going to be responsible for it, right? And that's the way the world works, right? And I don't care if it's as simple as you hiring a guy to come in to paint your property or something like that, and someone is walking by and then they accidentally drop a paint can off the roof and that paint can hits that individual that's walking by, then if the person's smart, he's going to sue the painter, but he's really going to come after you because you're the one with the property, and because you have property, you have money. So you're responsible for the people you hire. This is something that's just as old as probably law itself, So one of the terms is vicarious liability, and another one is respondent superior. Bottom line, if you hire a person, that person becomes your agent, and if he messes something up while he's doing whatever you hired him to do, you're going to ultimately be responsible for his actions, right? If you disagree and you have a legal explanation of why you disagree, or if you just disagree in general, leave your comments below, let me know why, right? So now, jurisdiction and venue. Now, one of the things that I think Crystal Nicol had in her video is that she read in Nicki Minaj's lawsuit how she read in Nicki Minaj's motion to dismiss on how this case was filed in the wrong place. And that's not true, because this case was filed in federal court. And federal court has something called diversity jurisdiction. And diversity jurisdiction basically only has two requirements. The first requirement is that the damages or the claim be above $75,000. And then the second requirement is that the people or the individuals or the parties to this case all live in different states. That's it. That's all you need. Then you can go to federal court and you can file a lawsuit against someone. Unlike maybe a state case where you have to file against somebody in that particular state, this is a federal claim, right? And they're using diversity jurisdiction. One second. They're using diversity jurisdiction. So I think at best, what would come out of this is that they'll say, okay, well, we're going to move this case to California instead of it being in New York or wherever it is, right? Actually, where is this case at? So this is actually, yeah, so this is in New York right now. The at best the thing what could happen in my personal opinion is that they'll move it to another state, but that's not going to kill the lawsuit. As far as I can see, they meet the requirements for diversity jurisdiction, so I don't see how this case is going to be dismissed because the court doesn't have jurisdiction. That's the claim that Nicki Minaj is essentially making when she's saying that the case was filed in the wrong state. Is that she's trying to claim personal jurisdiction. She's trying to say, I don't live there, I don't have connection to anything there, blah blah blah. She's trying to claim something called personal jurisdiction. And if the court doesn't have jurisdiction, it can't hear the case. And that's, the gist of it. But in this case, the court clearly has jurisdiction because they're using the diversity jurisdiction statute. And all you need is $75,000, and you need for the people to be in multiple states. And that's the situation, right? So we're not going to go through all this, but I want to start picking out some of the elements in this case that show that Jennifer Hugh has a very solid claim against both Nicki Minaj, and she has a solid claim against the defendant, right? So it goes on and it says, defendant Petty directly and indirectly intimidated the plaintiff not to speak out concerning the assault she experienced at the hands of defendant Petty, right? So she is saying that defendant Petty directly reached out to her and tried to intimidate her. Then she goes on, defendant Nicki Minaj directly and indirectly intimidated the plaintiff to recant her legitimate claim that the defendant Petty assaulted her. So one of the things that I think was read in Crystal Nicol's, one of her blogs, and Nicki Minaj's motion to dismiss, is that Nicki is basically saying that there's these agents and she can't prove that these agents were acting on behalf of Nicki. But in the lawsuit, she actually does make a no. Let me take a step back. I can't remember exactly what it said, but I think they're saying that she didn't make the claim that the agents were acting on behalf of Nicki. But when I read the lawsuit, it's apparent that the agents were acting on both behalf of Nicki and Kenneth Petty, and there's a clear distinction of who they were working on behalf of as you read this whole thing. But I'm not going to read the whole thing. You just have to take my word on it, right? But she's just saying defendant Nicki Minaj, and either way, it doesn't even really matter because Nicki Minaj spoke to Jennifer Hugh directly, right? So it doesn't even matter. That third person, the agent, doesn't even matter, right? But she goes on to say defendant Nicki Minaj directly, right? She had direct communication with the plaintiff, Jennifer Hugh, and indirectly intimidated the plaintiff to recant her legitimate claim that the defendant Petty assaulted her, right? And then it says defendant Nicki Minaj directly and indirectly harassed the plaintiff to recant her legitimate claim that the defendant Petty assaulted her. And it continues, defendant Nicki Minaj directly and indirectly threatened plaintiff to recant her legitimate claim that the defendant Petty assaulted her. And it goes on again. Defendant Nicki Minaj directly and indirectly reached out to plaintiff Hugh's family members to ensure the plaintiff would recant her legitimate claim that the defendant Petty assaulted her, right? Then it goes on. This is just crazy. And for each time that she lists that Nicki Minaj reached out to her, she's going to provide a specific instance where Nicki Minaj reached out for her. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. She explains at least on 5 different occasions, if I can remember correctly, don't quote me, I believe she explains in 5 different occasions where Nicki reached out to her. And then she goes again, finally, Nicki Minaj lied to her social media followers and Queen Radio listeners about what transpired when her spouse, Kenneth Petty, assaulted the plaintiff to prevent her spouse from registering as an offender in California, right? So these are serious claims. These are some very serious claims, people. And honestly, I'm surprised that there isn't a criminal complaint. I think a criminal complaint is probably going to come sooner rather than later. And if it doesn't come anytime soon, personally, I think Nicki Minaj should just go ahead and settle this and move on quickly. And basically, just to give you all a little background, and this is what I think happened. This is what I allege to have happened, right? I think that there's a couple of things that's going on here. This is my theory. I have no way to back this up. First, Nicki Minaj, she's a mega millionaire. I think if you Google her, she's worth at least $85 million, right? Let me know if you think I'm wrong on that. Comments below. Let me know what you think she's worth. But by my research, she's worth at least $85 million. But of course, money can't get you happiness. Money can't buy you everything. And as a guy, I would be happy with $85 million. And I have no problem dying alone and single and just being a playboy. But I think for Nicki Minaj, by her being a lady, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but I think most women, oh man, they're coming to get me. I don't know if you guys can hear these sirens. But I think most women, ultimately, they want to be in a relationship. They ultimately want to have something to come home to. They ultimately want somebody to basically love them. They ultimately want to have that, that man by their side, right? And you know what, most people are like that. I'm going to say that. You guys let me know what you think about that. And I don't know what happened with her and Meek Mills, but honestly, I think whatever happened between her and Meek Mill, she should have just worked it out and just stayed with him. That's my own personal opinion. I think that because she was probably feeling like she wanted to move to the next phase in her life, which includes a man and children, she reached out to probably, and I'm alleging here, I don't know if this is true, but someone that she probably had a relationship with when she was younger, probably, someone she had a connection with when she was younger, probably, someone she probably loved, right? I don't know. If you guys know the details, fill us in, right? But it just so happened that, this guy, in my personal opinion, and reading and if everything that is in this complaint is true, this complaint describes a scumbag, right? So if this stuff is true, then, you have to come to the conclusion that this guy is a scumbag. Again, I don't know if all this stuff is true. I'm just reading what's in the complaint. But this complaint describes a scumbag. So unfortunately, this is who she ultimately decided to be in a relationship with. So now, fast forward, she has kids, they get married, and this guy is an offender, right? He has to register where he is, and wherever he goes, he has to register as an offender. And that's I can imagine that's a horrible position to be in. You can't go wherever you want to go. You can't be free. You can't do what you want to do. You have this dark cloud hanging over your head for something that happened, when you were 16, 15, 16, whatever, right? So now you have this cloud hanging over your head. So it probably feels like you're in prison without actually being in prison. So from my understanding, what happened is that somehow he ends up in California, And when he goes to California, for whatever reason, for whatever reason, he didn't register. He didn't register. I don't know. I don't know why he played with himself like that, but you know damn well if you have that stuff floating over your head, you have to register. And for whatever reason, he didn't register. And because he didn't register, he violated, some of the conditions that he had to basically abide by. And because he violated those conditions, now he's in a situation where he could get possibly more jail time. So it appears to me that because of that incident and because allegedly Nicki Minaj wants to be with someone who's free and clear, she probably doesn't want a man, even though she loves him and she decided to father her children with him. Allegedly, this is all stuff that I'm making up, right? Allegedly, she probably wants to clear his name. But how do you clear his name when this dude is basically, he's already pled guilty to it, and this follows him for the rest of his life? How do you clear his name? Now, I believe that could be a path for him to clear his name, but to me, it looks like they went about it the wrong way. So he wants to clear his name, and she wants to have his name cleared, because who wants to be with someone who, and especially in this day and time, who wants to be with someone who is a registered offender, right? Who wants to be with somebody like that? So she's kind of stuck because she feels that this is her best option. Her best option is someone who is a offender, who's already pled guilty to it, and who actually killed somebody, right? So this guy's, in my opinion, right? You guys let me know what you think. Maybe women just love, the bad boys. I guess it's true. So because she wants to clear his name, and because he got himself into the situation where he goes to California, and I guess he wanted to be a desperado and decided he wasn't going to register or whatever reason, now he gets hit with another charge, and he could possibly do jail time because of that charge. So now that they're on the hook for this, now they want to come after the plaintiff, right, Jennifer Hugh, and they're probably thinking that if they can get Jennifer Hugh to recant, this is all alleged. This is all the stuff that I'm basically embellishing into this story because this is what I believe is going on, right? So allegedly they figure that if they can get her to recant her story, then everything would be cool. And now the charge in California goes away, and now he doesn't have this dark cloud over his head, and now they can be happy. My personal opinion in all this is that Nicki Minaj knew who she was marrying. She should have been happy with who she was marrying. She's a mega millionaire. She has over $85 million. It doesn't matter that he is a registered offender. It really doesn't matter. I don't know if she's trying to do this for optics or what, but it really doesn't even matter. I think she should have just let that lady alone, and she just should have had as many kids as she wanted with this man and just called it a day. But anyway, I digress. Let's go ahead and get into the story. But I think that's what's basically going on here. She wants to clear his name just on general principles, and then he made a mistake, and he basically went to California thinking he wasn't going to have to register, and they caught him. So that's what I think the situation is, right? So now they're trying to come back, right? And then it goes on to say plaintiff has moved to multiple states to avoid intimidation and harassments by the defendant, Minaj, and the defendant and their allies and legal teams and fans. Then they give this thing here, which is timeliness under the Child Victims Act. And essentially, I mean, guys, you already know what the situation is. I mean, the way these laws have changed, they allowing people. I have a video on my page now where a woman is coming back 31 years. After 31 years, she's coming back to basically sue Bill Cosby over some allegations, right? So this is the time we living in. We living in the Me Too era, right? So people can come back now. They can come back, 30, 40 years, they can come back from whenever, and they can sue you for emotional distress and, so on and so forth. So this is the time that we're living in. Excuse me. So let's get on with this. So now the factual allegations that Kenneth Petty violently assaulted the plaintiff Hugh. Now, to be honest with you, we really don't need to go through all this, and that's why I'm actually skipping it. This is the actual story of what happened. And the reason we don't need to go through it, if you guys want me to go through it, I'll go through the entire document in another video. And actually, I'm thinking this story is so juicy, I may just go through it, the allegations or the details in another video and kind of strip it out of this lawsuit and just kind of dumb it down. But the reason I'm saying we don't have to go through it is because he's basically essentially already pled guilty to a lesser charge. And that charge basically insinuates that this stuff is true, right? And yeah, he's already pled guilty to that. So we don't need to go there. I mean, you pretty much already heard the stories by now, right? And then we go on to this section. It says a 60-year-old plaintiff immediately reports the assault. Basically, after she was assaulted, and this is kind of sad because we want to automatically believe people who don't report the incident happens, right? We want to believe people who come up 30 and 40 years later, and then you ask them, well, why didn't you go to the police back then, right? We want to believe people like that, but we don't want to believe the person that reported it right away. And not only did they report it right away, they ended up basically getting a conviction out of the whole thing. So why people don't want to believe her story is beyond me. Right now, I actually heard, and I'm not going to say whose channel it was, but I heard a video of someone having a panel, and someone in that panel was basically trying to question whether or not these allegations are true. I mean, the dude has already pled guilty to it. He's already pled guilty, right? So anyway, moving on, right? And after she reported it, she had to endure victim blaming, right? So basically, one of her friends, right, came out and basically blamed her, victim bashed her. And then her parents victim bashed her because her parents were afraid that the defendant, Petty, was going to seek retribution, or he was going to seek revenge, not retribution, he was going to seek revenge because she actually reported the allegations, right? So, yeah, so she had to endure intense victim blaming, victim shaming because of what happened to her, right? And then it goes on, defendant's Petty's parents even took plaintiff to the district attorney. They pretended to be the plaintiff's aunts and uncles to get the plaintiff to drop the charges against the defendants. So his parents got involved in this, and then his parents, allegedly, right? Everything in this video is alleged. His parents ends up playing like they're her aunts and uncles, and they're trying to get her to drop the claim, right? And then she even got victim blamed by her own family. Shortly after the visit from the defendant's parents, the plaintiff's household began receiving death threats. Rumors circulated in the neighborhood that something would happen to the plaintiff if she did not drop the charges. Jamaica, Queens is a tough neighborhood, and threats of that nature are not taken lightly, right? And then the plaintiff was constantly beaten and verbally abused both outside her home and in her home because everyone wanted her to drop the charges against the defendant. Women just have it bad. I'm sorry. Women just have it bad. And this is why I believe in the Me Too movement. Because there are victims out there, and there are victims out there who are forced to basically recant because they receive pressure from not only the family of the people that victimized them, but also from her own friends and family, right? So this is just crazy to me how this woman went through so much. And then it goes on and it says plaintiff suffers physical violence. I'm sorry, plaintiff suffers physical violence as a result of the defendant's Petty's plea, right? Plaintiff told the truth and said, they are forcing me to drop the charges. The DA responded that she would handle it. And this is the story where basically she ends up being forced to go to court on the day that Petty is supposed to be found guilty or enter his plea deal. And she was going to court to basically recant her story, right? But fortunately, they called her at that time and they said, look, don't worry about this. We'll take care of it. And then it goes on. Plaintiff was beaten at home that day because she was not convincing enough for the judge. And the family was afraid what would happen because the defendant was now facing prison time, right? And then basically this lady had to leave New York because of all this, right? Her uncle, and she leaves New York and then she goes to, she goes to Florida. She goes to Florida, right? And she goes to live with her uncle, and then her uncle ends up assaulting her. Her uncle ended up assaulting her shortly after her arrival. Plaintiff left her uncle's home in Florida and has been on her own ever since, right? I mean, this story is really, really, really crazy, right? Now, it's so crazy it almost leads you not to believe it, but I don't know. I'm just going to assume that, she's telling the truth. I don't see any reason that she would lie about all this. If anyone has any comments, go ahead and leave them below. But I actually saw Jennifer on another video telling this story, and she seemed believable, right? She seemed believable. And not only that, he's already basically pled guilty to this. So we know that this did occur because he pled guilty to it, right? And then the ensuing years, plaintiff was mentally and emotionally destroyed and attempted to find value in kindness, anything she could, partying, drugs, living in the streets, in and out of shelters. The plaintiff's self-worth was at zero. Her emotions were empty and she was lost, right? So according to this, Petty really destroyed her life, right? Then it goes on, Kenneth Petty and Nicki Minaj intimidated and harassed the plaintiff. So this is where she begins to explain how Nicki Minaj was actually directly responsible and indirectly responsible for harassment, basically, right? It goes on. Ketty was 15 and she was 16. Oh, so basically, all right, so Nicki Minaj gets with Kenneth Petty and they decide to get married and have kids. Now, here's the thing. Let me read this first, and then I'll come back with my commentary. Basically, it says, toward the end of November, defendant Nicki Minaj posted another picture of her and the defendant, Petty, and replied to the comment stating, Kenneth was 15, she was 16, in a relationship, but go AFW internet, right? And then it says, this was picked up by every publication, tabloid, internet radio, USA Today, bloggers, and YouTube, etc. And then it goes on, as a result of the defendant Nicki Minaj's post, the plaintiff was sought after for comment. Seeing no choice than to defend the truth, the plaintiff recorded an interview with a YouTube blogger giving her side of the story. Plaintiff thought that would be the end of it. And this is where I'm going to say that she actually made a mistake, because I understand that Nicki Minaj, she came out and I guess she's with Kenneth Petty and she wants to find a way to, allegedly, right? This is all alleged. She wants to explain why she's with a convicted offender. She wants to explain why she's with a convicted offender. In my personal opinion, this is where both of them made a mistake. In my personal opinion, Nicki Minaj doesn't need to explain anything. And she doesn't need to prove anything to anybody, right? Especially since she's a mega millionaire. This woman is worth $85 million. She should be able to do whatever she wants to do and just tell everybody else to, go play with themselves, right? So it really shouldn't matter that she's a mega millionaire and she has all this money. She really just has the right to do whatever she wants to do. That's her business, is not for the world to know. And then if anybody confronts her about her business, she could have simply responded with, hey, that's my personal family life and I don't talk about my family life. And that's it. That's it. She doesn't have to prove anything to anybody, but maybe it's an image thing. You guys let me know. Maybe she feels because she is a superstar and she wants these endorsements, or maybe she wants to basically keep up her image. Maybe she's deciding to do this. She decides to come out with these statements, and basically because she wants to salvage her image or she wants to maintain her image. That's what I believe. You guys let me know what you think. But either way, it was a mistake. It was a mistake because here's the thing. You know that this dude is a convicted offender. And then not only is he a convicted offender, he actually went to jail for killing someone, an innocent person, right? So this dude has been in and out of jail probably for most of his life. And he tells you, and if he told you that this was a story, you know darn well that you have to question this, right? You just don't take that and you put that out there on the internet because there's another person involved in all this. And, a reasonable person knows or should know that you just can't make statements like that without verifying that, right? So she didn't verify this statement, which was that he was 15 and she was 16 and they were in a relationship. You can't be irresponsible like that. And I think this is one of the things that a lot of, and I'm just going to say it, not being racist, but, a lot of my brothers and sisters, a lot of black people, they're just irresponsible when it comes down to things like this because they think they can just post whatever, whenever they want, and they can just throw it out there on the internet. But at the end of the day, I think they do things like this because for one or two reasons. Either they don't have nothing in life and they know they're never going to have anything in life. So therefore, they feel that they can just do whatever they want to do without consequence. And it's true, right? If you're the type of person that doesn't care about life and you don't have anything to live for, you're not working on anything, you're not trying to do anything, then yeah, you can just get on the internet, you can just do irresponsible stuff and not worry about the consequences, because if somebody comes back and sue you, it don't matter because you don't have anything anyway, and you ain't never gonna have anything, right? So those are the type of people that gets on the internet and post things like that. And the other type of people who gets on the internet and post things like this is people who are just simply not aware that you can be sued. They're not aware that you can be sued. And I think Nicki Minaj probably wasn't thinking when she decided to take this course of action, right? Because you have a convicted felon in front of you and a registered offender. And of course he's going to lie. Of course this dude is not going to be honorable. Of course this dude is not a stand-up guy. Of course he would tell you something like this. But what did you do to vet this story? What did you do to determine whether or not this information is true and correct before you put it out there? What did you do, right? What did she do, right? Did she go to court, check the records, and see if that was actually in the records, right? Did you contact the defendant and say, hey, I've heard about, what happened, and I, just wanted to know if it's okay that we could talk, and I just want to know if this stuff really... No, she didn't vet the story. She just throws it out there, right? So that could just be an honest mistake, but it's not. It's not an honest mistake because it goes on. And then it goes, the defendant, Minaj, used her celebrity platform to bash the plaintiff. And then she goes on, she repeated the same comment that the defendant Petty was 15 years old, but now added that he was wrongly accused and he did not have bail money, and said that the plaintiff had written a letter recanting her statement, but would face 90 days in jail if the plaintiff had done so, which is all false. So now you're going beyond just making an honest mistake. The first time she posted this information could have been taken as just a simple honest mistake, right? But now you're making up stuff. You're making shit up. You're just totally making stuff up, and now you're being persistent. And you have to realize that this woman is a victim. She is officially a victim of this man. So here's where, and this is where I think either on Nicole's channel, she was saying, I believe Nicki Minaj, I can't remember the details, but they were saying that she didn't have to claim. That was the gist of it, right? That's not what the blogger said, Nicole, right? Crystal Nicol. That's not what she was saying. That's what was in the actual motion, I believe, that Nicki Minaj basically filed, right? Or something along those lines. But here's a problem. The first time you came out and said this, it could be an honest mistake. But now you're persisting, and not only are you persisting, you're making up shit. You're making up shit, and you basically changing the story up, saying that he was wrongly accused. You know that dude wasn't wrongly accused, and he didn't have bail money. And that she written a letter, but was scared that she would go to jail in 90 days. So now you're persisting. And again, a reasonable person knows that, or should know, that this woman is a victim. She is officially, just like he's a registered offender, she's a official victim. And you're coming out, and this is where the emotional distress kicks in, because you're coming out and you're putting this story out there, right? You're putting this woman's business out there, which is an invasion of privacy and false light, right? Those are claims that should have been added to this lawsuit. And I think they missed an opportunity. I think this is a mistake. This is a mistake on probably Blackburn's part if he actually wrote this, right? But throw that to the side. So you're taking a victim, somebody who's been suffering for years, and trying to find a way to deal with her situation, and who's never really fully gotten over it. And because all this stuff has happened to her, she's been derailed in life, right? When she tells her story, she basically was a school kid. And this guy was basically, I'm sorry, but he was a scumbag. He was a scumbag who didn't go to school, and he basically assaulted her, right? So now her life has been derailed. She's been abused and accused most of her life. And just when she gets to the point of where she's starting to get a foothold in life, here Nicki Minaj comes, and she's basically blasting this stuff over the internet. So this woman can't ignore this stuff. She can't get away from it, right? She can't get away from it. So you have to understand that this would cause emotional distress, right? A reasonable person would know that this conduct would be outrageous, because you're basically taking these claims against someone who has been the victim, and it's already clear that she's been the victim, and then you're without a legitimate cause, and you're negligently throwing this out on the internet, and you're basically lying, right? You're basically committing fraud, because this stuff is not true, and you have to know it's not true, right? So this is a bona fide claim for emotional distress, in my opinion. If you guys think differently, if you guys think different, let me know. Questions and comments below, right? And then she goes on and says, but white is right because the plaintiff is biracial, right? And then it goes on, defendant Petty is arrested for failure to register as an offender, right? And this is where he basically goes to California, and I don't know why he decided to play with himself and think he didn't have to register. You know damn well you got to register as an offender when you got that cloud hanging over your head. And then it goes on, a few days after the arrest, I'm sorry, a few days after the arrest, the plaintiff was contacted by an old childhood friend, Black. They caught up, and the topic of the plaintiff's assault came up, to which the plaintiff stated she wished it could all go away forever. Black responded, I can make that happen. So she ends up talking to a childhood friend, and she thinks that this communication is probably, allegedly, right? I'm just throwing this in there. She probably thinks that at this point that this is some by chance communication by an old childhood friend, right? But then it goes on, a few days later, Black called her and informed her that the defendant Minaj asked for the plaintiff's phone number and that he had given it to her. Shortly after that, the defendant Minaj called the plaintiff. So this is where they're going to be able to prove that Black was basically an agent of Nicki Minaj, because Black, and it doesn't take a genius to figure this out, right? You know, they're going to, and I think another mistake that was made is that they should have actually sued this dude named Black. Whoever he is, he should be sued as well, right? But it doesn't take a genius to see that Black is acting on behalf of Nicki Minaj. And I think on Crystal Nicol's channel, she reads the motion to dismiss by Nicki Minaj. And I think in that motion to dismiss, they're trying to say that they didn't allege that Black was acting on Nicki Minaj's behalf. And to me, it's clear that he was, right? It's clear that he was. And I don't really see in the judge dismissing her claim against Nicki Minaj. I just don't see it happening. Right? So Black goes and basically gives her number to Nicki Minaj, right? And then it goes on. During the call, and that's going to have to be proven. It's going to have to be proven that Black was Nicki Minaj's agent. But I don't think that's going to be hard to prove, right? But I think Nicki Minaj probably could get away from this, but I don't think she's going to be able to dismiss the case. She could probably argue that Black contacted her out of the blue and she never reached out to Black. But I think what's going to happen if Tyrone Blackburn is smart, he's going to find what phone number or what cell that Black uses on a regular basis, and then he's going to subpoena Black's phone records, and he's going to basically look at his call logs around about the time that all this stuff went down, and he's going to see whether or not Black actually reached out to if he was in communication with Nicki Minaj prior to reaching out to Jennifer Hugh. That's the way that goes down, right? Or, you know, maybe they sued Black. There's multiple ways that they can get this information, but to me, it's clear as day in the way it's been worded that Black was acting on behalf of Nicki Minaj, right? And then it goes, during the call, the defendant Nicki Minaj stated that she heard the plaintiff was willing to help out their situation and stated that she would fly the plaintiff and her family to Los Angeles. Plaintiff declines this offer, right? She's like, no, I'm not doing that. Then the defendant Minaj then stated that she would send her publicist to meet the plaintiff to craft a statement recanting the statement's assault charge. Plaintiff denies the offer as well, right? So this is where harassment is going to come in, right? You know, because you asked once, she said no. Then you're pushing it. You know, you continuously go to this woman who is a victim and who basically is a registered victim as far as I'm concerned, and you're badgering her and you're continuously trying to get her to recant her statement. This is emotional distress, right? Both negligent and intentional, right? Because you should know better than this, right? And then it goes on. Before they got off the phone, the plaintiff said to the defendant, Minaj, I need you to know, woman to woman, that this happened. She's basically trying to, be real with Nicki. And she's basically turning to Nicki, trying to connect with Nicki to say, look, you married a scumbag. And this dude did this to me, right? And I think, to be honest with you, I think this was a missed opportunity on Nicki's side. Because when she said that to her, when she said, I need you to know, woman to woman, that this happened, she's reaching out to Nicki Minaj, right? And at this point that she's reaching out, Nicki Minaj could have had a chance to basically sit down with this woman and basically talk to her and basically get to the point where they could get some understanding. Now, that understanding may not lead to her recanting the story, but that understanding could have led to healing. And healing leads to forgiveness. And forgiveness leads to correction. And I think there could have been maybe not the correction that Nicki Minaj and Kenneth Petty was looking for, but I think it would have been helpful to them. Because, like I said, my position in all of this is that Nicki Minaj has tons of money, that the registered offender status should not be an issue for them, right? Shouldn't even be an issue, right? And I think they could have gotten to the path of healing, and they could have gotten to the path of where they could have made this right. But she missed that opportunity, right? She missed that opportunity because the defendant, Minaj, hung up the phone. Within days of this conversation, the plaintiff and her family suffered an onslaught of harassing calls and unsolicited visits, right? So now that she told you she's not going to recant, now you continuously called her and you continuously visit her, right? Trying to get her to recant. And then it goes on. Defendant Minaj sends her associates and attorneys to harass and intimidate the plaintiff, right? And then it goes on. A few days after the defendant Minaj called the plaintiff's brother called her. He stated that two people reached out to a family member stating an offer of $500,000, right? $500,000 from the defendant Minaj if the plaintiff wrote a letter recanting her assault claim against the defendant Petty, right? So you're constantly reaching out to her, you're reaching out to her family. And then it goes on. The defendant Minaj sends lawyers and investigators to the plaintiff's house. On April 20th, 2020, on behalf of the defendant's fact-finding investigator, Charles Middlesalt from Georgia, contacted the plaintiff and put her in contact with an attorney named Ian Walsh, right? Attorney Walsh from New York. So, long story short, Walsh reaches, according to this complaint, Walsh reaches out to Jennifer Hugh and say, hey, I'm going to be your attorney and I'm going to show you how you can basically recant, this story. And she's like, no, I'm not going to recant, the assault allegation because it happened, right? And then it goes on, the defendant Minaj sent back to the plaintiff's house. Black continues to receive and relays messages from the defendant to the plaintiff, right? So Black now is officially acting as a middleman because he's continued to relay message from Minaj to basically Jennifer, right? So she thinks that she's protecting herself by having Black reach out to Jennifer, but it's not true. It's not true. Black is your agent. You're responsible for the actions of Black. But it doesn't even matter because you've already directly caused emotional distress, right? So then it goes on for a while. Plaintiff ignored Black's call. Plaintiff finally answered and Black tells her that he had good news. Black stated that nothing would happen to the plaintiff if she signs and notarizes some papers. So now you're threatening, right? So now you are threatening. And then it goes on. Black then pulls $20,000 out of his armrest and places it on the plaintiff's lap. Plaintiff took the money off her lap and placed it on the floor. Plaintiff could not believe that the defendant Minaj would go this far to bribe her. Black even said that the defendant Minaj would also send happy birthday videos to the plaintiff's daughter for a Sweet 16 as a bonus. So now you're dragging her daughter into all this. Yo, this stuff is crazy. This is absolutely crazy. I don't even see how Nicki Minaj allowed all this stuff to basically happen, because you're really setting yourself up to catch a charge, to be honest with you, right? And then, and it's going to be obvious why I say this. I'm just going to hold that for now. And then goes on, plaintiff suffers. The memories began to flood back from the day of her assault. And then it goes on, the brother stated that they know where she lived, where her daughter, what her daughter does, and threatened to have someone else show up at the plaintiff's house. After receiving this threat, plaintiff moved in June 2020. She changed her phone number, registered her new number under her husband's name. And then plaintiff became so paranoid that she moved again in August 2020. So in order to avoid Nicki Minaj and Kenneth Petty and their agents, this woman is moving from one place, constantly moving to escape the harassment. Then at some point, the United States Marshals come out and they get involved in all this, right? And the Marshals offered the plaintiff a witness protection. The Marshals also confirmed with the plaintiffs that the call she received from California was indeed the defendant, Nicki Minaj. So now, here's the thing. The Marshals have gotten involved in this. And now that they've gotten involved, Nicki Minaj has to know, I hope she's smart enough to know, that there's now an official investigation going on. Now, the way the feds work, and I've said this millions of times, they don't come at you right away. They sit back and they collect all the evidence. And once they have enough evidence and they continue to investigate and they're happy with their investigation, then they press charges. My personal opinion, Nicki needs to settle this case before charges are basically filed against her, because eventually the prosecutors are going to get pissed off over all this, and they're just going to go ahead and prosecute, right? That's my own personal opinion. But then again, you know, Nicki Minaj is a millionaire. Who knows? She may have influence. I don't know. And then it goes on. Plaintiff is contacted by defendant's Petty's legal counsel. So now Kenneth Petty's legal counsel is contacted her. And then it goes on. Plaintiff gets a call from a New York attorney stating that they represent defendant Petty. The attorney states that they were trying to go to court to get the defendant Petty off the offenders registry, and asks about the recant letter and if she wrote it, right? So now, magically, there's a letter that's popped up, and they're trying to figure out whether or not she wrote it. They know damn well she didn't write that letter. Then it goes on. Plaintiff then moves from Florida to protect her family. Plaintiff's daughter and a friend group were approached by a man. The man asked, "Do you know Zoo?" Zoo is defendant's Petty street name, right? You know, so now they're harassing her daughter. And it goes on. In November 2020, plaintiff put a YouTube video out speaking about everything she had been going through in hopes of creating a digital footprint just in case something was to happen to her. I think this was kind of a mistake. For one, you're making yourself a public person. You're coming out, you're putting these videos out there, and when you do that, you make yourself a public person. And because you're a public person, now people have kind of justification for coming out and commenting on things you said in your YouTube video. What I would have done if I were in her situation, I would have just continued to go to the police. And if something happens to you, then the police knows, where to go in terms of trying to start an investigation. That's what she should have did, or went to the FBI or something, right? And then it goes on. Plaintiff has not worked since May of 2020 due to severe depression, paranoia, constant moving, harassment, and threats from the defendant and their associates. She is currently living in isolation out of fear and retaliation. So now she's living out in the boondocks, no known location, nowhere to communicate with her. She's just out there and she's just out in the middle of nowhere because she's trying to avoid this harassment, right? Then it goes on. Now we get into the accounts. Count 1 against defendant Petty, intentional infliction of emotional distress. Now keep in mind what they're doing in this claim is that they are actually coming after Kenneth Petty for the assault that he actually did way back when they were 15 to 16, whatever, right? So he actually got off easy because he actually copped out to a lesser charge. So now she's coming back and she's suing him for all the stuff that he basically did then, right? And then it goes on and they go the claim for intentional emotional distress, a plaintiff must plead 1, extreme outrageous conduct, 2, intent to cause or disregard of a substantial probability of causing severe and emotional distress, and 3, a causal connection between the conduct and the injury, and 4, severe emotional distress, right? So she's going to be able to prove that. She's going to be able to prove that, number 1, his, obviously assault was extreme and outrageous conduct. And then you either intended to cause emotional distress or you disregarded a substantial probability of causing emotional distress, right? And then, you were casual about the whole situation, and as a result, she was, she was under emotional distress, right? So that's going to be pretty easy to basically prove, right? So there's no mystery there. I mean, you're basically assaulting the person, and you don't care that first off, your conduct is outrageous because you're assaulting her, and then second, you know that this assault is basically going to cause emotional distress, and if you don't know, you should know, right? And then you're kind of casual, you really just don't care, right? And then finally, it actually did cause her emotional distress. So that's a no-brainer. They're gonna prove that easy, right? And then it goes on, defendant's petty, extreme, and outrageous conduct alleged in this complaint, including but not limited to the assault, harassment, intimidation, was intentional and malicious and committed with the intent to deliberately inflict humiliation, mental anguish, and emotional and physical distress upon the plaintiff, Hugh, and done in wanton and reckless disregard for the consequences to the plaintiff. So yeah, that's not going to be hard to prove, right? Then it goes on, defendant Petty knew with substantial certainty or should have known, right? And that's, this is a term that you guys need to basically pay attention. Whenever they say you knew or should have known, that's basically a legal term whereby they're saying a reasonable person wouldn't act in this way. And a reasonable person, would essentially conduct himself in a certain manner. And I think that's basically the reasonable person standard. And basically, there's no real way to get away from that because they're saying, what would a reasonable person do, right? And then let me just reread this. It says that the defendant Petty knew with substantial certainty or should have known that his behavior would cause the plaintiff to be a victim of assault, abuse, and contact, right? Defendant Petty with substantial certainty or should have known that this behavior would cause a severe emotional distress to the plaintiff, Hugh. Defendant Petty committed the infliction of emotional distress, physical and mental distress, willfully and intentionally, and by means of coercion, oppression, fraud, malice, and conscious disregard of the plaintiff Hugh's rights. Right? So that's not going to be hard to prove. And then count 2 against defendant Petty, assault, right, and battery, right? And this is all going back. We don't need to go through that because, like I said, he's essentially already pled guilty to most of that stuff, right? So that is going to go without needing to be read. Let me see. I'm trying to wrap this up. And then count 3 against defendant Petty, right? The assault, same thing, right? We don't need to go through this stuff because the story is already out there. Everybody knows what's been alleged. And then count 4 against Petty, negligent infliction of emotional distress. And basically, she's claiming that the stalking plaintiff Hugh's 22-year-old daughter, stalking plaintiff Hugh's family house, causing plaintiff to move residence on multiple occasions throughout the years, bribing plaintiff into recanting her assault claim, threatening the plaintiff with physical bodily harm if she did not recant her claim, and threatening the plaintiff with death via social media posts, right? Now, these are some very serious claims, and they're going to be easy to prove. They should be easy to prove. Then it goes on. Count 5 against the defendant Petty and defendant Minaj, harass and witness intimidation, right? Then it goes on. Harassment is the unlawful violence, a credible threat of violence, or a knowing and willful course of conduct directed at a specific person that seriously alarms, annoys, or harasses a person, and that serves no legitimate purpose under section 526. Under section 527.6, subsection B. The course of conduct must be such that would cause a reasonable person to suffer substantial emotional distress and cause substantial emotional distress to the plaintiff, right? And they gave you case law for that, right? All right, so I think count 6, and this is where they get into Minaj against defendant Minaj, aiding and abetting, right? And then it goes, in California, liability for aiding and abetting the commission of an intentional tort may be imposed upon a person who, A, knows the other conduct constitutes a breach of duty and gives a substantial assistance or encouragement to the other to act so, or B, gives substantial assistance to the other in accomplishing a torturous result, and the person's conduct separately considered constitutes a breach of duty to the third person. So this is where I wanted to point out, in opposition to the BlackTeablog, she basically said that Nicki Minaj wasn't responsible for what Petty did when Petty was 16. That's what she's saying, right? But you're responsible for your actions now because Petty is not supposed to be reaching out to. Petty is not supposed to be reaching out to his victims and not supposed to be harassing his victims, but instead he's harassing the victim through Minaj. And this is where, they're making the claim that Nicki Minaj is responsible because basically Petty has a duty to basically respect his victim's privacy. He's not supposed to be reaching out to her. He's not supposed to be harassing her. There's not supposed to be any contact, right? And because Minaj is helping him, right, she's basically involved. She's aiding and abetting, right? That's the argument here, right? And then it goes on. While aiding and abetting may not require a defendant to agree to join the wrongful conduct, it necessarily requires a defendant to reach a conscious decision to participate in torturous activity to assist another in performing a wrongful act. And yeah, that's essentially what it is, So I think what's going to happen here is that Nicki Minaj can probably argue that they didn't do anything wrong. But that's going to be tough because, like I said, this woman is a surviving victim of Petty. And you're constantly reaching out to her, trying to get her to recant her stories. You're basically going on social media posts, and then you're basically coming up with I'm just going to say lies. I was going to say you come up with alternate versions of the story of what happened, but they're basically lies. You're basically lying on social media as to what actually happened, and you're causing her even more emotional distress because she can't ignore that. And now people are seeking her out because of the lies that you're telling on the internet. Then it goes on. Similar, the 11th Circuit held that a defendant is liable for aiding and abetting a torturous act if the defendant A does a torturous act in concert with another or pursuant to a common design with him, right? And B knows that the conduct constitute a breach of duty and gives the substantial assistance or encouragement to the other so to conduct himself. Or C gives substantial assistance to the other in accomplishment a torturous result, and his conduct separately considered constitutes a breach of duty to the third person. Right? And then count 7, against the defendant Minaj and the defendant Petty intentionally inflicted emotional distress in California and Georgia. For whatever reason, I don't have notes on that. But at this point, do we even need to read all this? Because, like I said, it's already apparent in the stuff we've already read. So that's the gist of it. Let me know what you guys think of this video. Am I off? Do you guys think Nicki Minaj is going to go scot-free? Now, funny enough, whatever you guys think, one thing I think everybody can agree on is that Kenneth Petty is definitely going to go down. And there's no escaping for him. As a matter of fact, I think the default judgment against him is basically going to stand, right? Unless he comes out and he basically defends himself against it. And then not only that, he's also dealing with his potential breach of registering as an offender in California. He's still on the hook for that, and he could do some jail time for that. So he actually has bigger things to worry about, right? So I think a loss for Kenneth Petty is going to be a loss for Nicki Minaj, because let's face it, even if Nicki can somehow sever herself from these claims, if she can wiggle out all of this, Kenneth Petty is still going to be hit. And by Kenneth Petty being hit with, all these claims, it's basically going to hurt him, right? So it could be that, he doesn't have to have anything in his name, and he doesn't have to own anything because his wife, Nicki Minaj, owns everything, and, she has money, so what does he have to worry about? But I honestly think at some point Nicki Minaj is going to want to go ahead and settle all this, if not for herself, at least for her husband, because what could potentially happen, like I said, is that there could be criminal charges filed. And even if Nicki Minaj is able to escape the criminal charges, her husband won't be able to. And if her husband isn't able to escape this, what can happen is that a criminal restitution could be registered against him. And then in that situation, you have to pay, because if you don't pay anything, then what's going to happen is that they're going to bring you back to court, and you're going to have to explain to the court why you're driving around in Ferraris and you can't afford to pay, this woman for restitution. So honestly, this doesn't look good for Nicki Minaj. Go ahead and settle it. Nicki Minaj is worth $85 million. She's a mega superstar. Go ahead and say, look, I'll give you, instead of 20, I'll give you 10. Let's just settle this and leave it alone. And then Nicki can go out and make a few more records and get that money right back. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think she should settle? Do you think she should fight? And why do you think the way that you do? Questions and comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe.